My name is Michael Strumsky, and this is my podcast, People More Interesting Than Me. Each episode, I'll interview a person with a different background to try to understand what circumstances, family, or tragedy has made them into the individual they are today. Enjoy. Today, I have with me is Andrew Heizer. We've known each other since, 2009. Because that's when we were both on the same hall together, and I
Yes.
guess everyone intermingled then, and we just made a huge bunch of friends from it.
Yeah.
And you are another Augusta County person or individual from Augusta County. I mean, you are the good ones who will do interviews with me. That's what
Yeah.
it
Well,
seems like.
it's weird because I feel like you are like I don't know, we're like your dairy to Stephen King. Um
What did you say? I heard you say dairy. What is that?
uh like Stephen King novels, like
Mm-hmm.
he always goes back to the same town and I think it's
Mm,
Maine. I think it's Derry, Maine.
I didn't know
I,
that.
if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, Stephen King.
Because I know that they do a couple like what's that not Castle Rock, what's that one with the prison? I know it's connected to Shawshank, but the new show
uh
that they were doing, it was like Castle Rock or something like that with Shawshank in it. It
yeah,
doesn't matter,
yeah.
but it was on Hulu and stuff like that.
I think it was Castle Rock. I have not watched it, but
Castle Rock either sounds like a kids show with Muppets because I hear Fraggle Rock, or it's the
Fraggle
name
Rock.
of where the Lannisters are from in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It's one of the two. Wait, isn't that one called Castle Rock?
Casterly Rock, I
Okay,
believe.
they're very close. They're both very close.
I mean, there could be some type of like meta
Yeah,
mashup or something with that.
there could be. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, I guess, just like everyone else, where you're from, your family, and kind of what your upbringing was like.
Okay. So I am from Middlebrook, Virginia, which is in Augusta County. I grew up on a beef cattle farm. My father worked when I was really young. He worked at like their family dairy growing up, and then the dairy shut down, and he kind of transitioned over to beef cattle. Uh, and then after the dairy shut down, he kind of went out and he worked at Best Buy for a little while in their distribution center, and then went on to work at Target in their distribution center. And then my mother was a school teacher, fourth grade school teacher for as long as I can remember. Um, but rural community, I guess you would say tight knit, like everybody knows everybody type deal. Um,
Did the dairy just shut down? Was there any like
so
it?
my grandfather actually, I guess he had gotten or he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in that time frame. I think they also were looking at updating the dairy to keep up with like I
Mhm.
guess FDA requirements and things like that. And to do that, the costs were going to be so tremendous, it just wasn't feasible. So
Mhm.
they thought, this is probably a good time to kind of phase that out and
Mhm.
move on to other things because they didn't have a lot of commitment from everybody to kind of go in on it.
It just seems weird to me that your dad transitioned from milking the cows to sending the cows off to get slaughtered. Is that like a, would you say that's a big to me
I
it
mean,
sounds like a big transition, but
it, uh, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things like, I know a lot of people look at that as like, oh, that's a horrible thing. You slaughter cows, or you're doing this, that, or the other. But I mean, you know, you look at a lot of these small farms, and the people, are taking care of their cattle like almost like pets. The only downside is at the end when their time to feed the
take it.
world is there. They go on. It's just kind of a way of life. And I think like, Kyle Kramer, you'd interviewed previously, kind of hit on this. Like growing up in that lifestyle, you see a lot of things that, while it really stinks and it might be sad, it is kind of like life. Like, sometimes animals get sick and sometimes animals die. So I feel like it introduces you to that like death at an
Mhm.
early age, because I don't remember like in our family like our grandparents, some of the first ones to pass away that I remember. That was in high school when we were older, so I didn't lose like a family member or things like when I was really really young. So I don't know if that's like the best comparison, but you know, seeing
Yeah.
some of that stuff and like the circle of life, I guess, as it
Mhm.
were, it kind of just gets you used to that at an early age.
Yeah. No, I get that. So, was there any pressure from your dad or your mom? I know I asked this to Kyle. You have an older sister, and it's just
Yeah.
you. You're the only son in the family.
No, not really. I mean, I think it's something that he certainly wants to like see us continue,
Mhm.
but it hasn't been like a thing. I guess as we've gotten older, it has been a thing. I know when we were younger, like we would do shows and things, and I know like my dad would get really excited about it. So he was kind of like always, "Oh, let's go to this show. Let's go to this show," like showing beef cattle and stuff.
Mhm.
So I guess at a younger age, I was always like, "Oh man, this is annoying," or like, I don't know if I really want to go to these shows and do this and do that." But it was something to do, and it was something you could learn stuff from. So but as we've gotten older, like I still help when I can on stuff, but you know, it's one of those things where he's not like, "You've got to come help us do this. You got to come help us do that. Save the farm," type thing. Like
Yeah.
I think, I would love to do more on the farm, but it's one of those things like it's really hard to do both.
Yeah.
And then also have kids. Dad grew up and he would work all day at Target, come home, then go out for a few hours and do stuff with the cows and stuff like that, and then come in and just be like exhausted. And I'm not sure I want to like do that because I do want to have time to spend with like my kids and my wife and things like that. Not that he didn't spend time with us, but it's just like it's one more thing, I guess, when you
No, I
can.
get it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I definitely want to do more. But it's a very big commitment because it's just very expensive, and you're not always making all your money back. Uh,
So from I guess what I see from you guys is it's more of a tradition than an actual uh I mean, obviously, like you said, you make money and stuff like that, but it's more of a tradition in the area, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
how many
yeah.
people don't have cattle there? Is that like a predominant thing you would say?
I'd say 50-50, I guess, because I always
Mhm.
look at it as like there are actual farmers out there that do it for a living, and they would look at me and be like, "Oh, that's just a hobby." Like it has the potential to be a very expensive hobby. Not that I really don't know about other people's hobbies. I'm sure everybody has an expensive
Mhm.
hobby, but it's one of those like you know, it's rewarding, but at the same time, it can when you've got a family and a house and things like that, it's one more thing to have to spend money on and keep up. Or
Yeah.
like a vet, like if you have to call the vet to come look at a cow or something, depending on what it is, it costs several $100s or several thousand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So,
Because one of the things that didn't make it on Kyle's podcast, I was talking to him about the birthing a calf, and I was just like, I can't even see how calves are born by themselves. Like how did that even happen before people were pulling these calves out of these cows? Like it must have taken like 3 days to get this calf out. But
like usually it doesn't, unless there's a problem. But I think, and that's one thing like we kind of do is we look for a cow or a bull's stats. So like if they have a lower calving weight, then like the calves will be small, so they'll be easier for the cows to birth. But if you get like a bull with a really high birth weight, then the calves are going to be larger. The cows may have problems. So we always look at those stats and try to gear towards what's going to be easier on the cow, and then ultimately what's going to be easier on us. Uh, you know, so we don't have to be out there trying to pull and stress the cow and then calling a vet to help do it
hmm,
and all this stuff. So
when did you know that you wanted to be in law enforcement?
For whatever reason, I don't know. I felt like I wanted to be in law enforcement from when I was like little. I remember, I think it was like, it might have been like third or fourth grade where you had some thing where you talked with the teacher about what you want to do when you grow up. And I was like, I want to be a police officer because, you know, I, I don't know, I wanted to help people. And, I guess like the generic answer for why you want to be in law enforcement. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is these days, but I just felt like I wanted to help people, and that's what I tried to do when I was in that profession.
So that fits with your type 6 Enneagram, the committed, security-oriented type. Sixes are reliable, hardworking, responsible, and trustworthy. Excellent troubleshooters, good with cooperation, but can also become defensive, evasive, and anxious, running on stress while complaining about it.
That sounds right. Right.
So, you're probably maybe like number one or top 3 of my probably most reliable, not just reliable, but also probably nicest friends I have. And I mean, not saying where I'm from, we're not nice. We're just more
different. Just different.
Yeah, just different.
There's no way to describe it. It's just different.
We're seasoned. Yeah, we're seasoned. But yeah, when I read through this, definitely touches on big points. Like we were talking before, the big people that are on here. And I said there was a lot of good ones, but I mean Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan,
Thanks.
U2's Bono. Here's a good one, Ellen DeGeneres.
Oh,
not too good right now. Okay, if I would have said that 5 years ago, you would have said it was good. Larry David, Mark Twain. There's also some good ones here. So you said law enforcement was always, I assume it was your go-to answer whenever anyone asked you, what did you want to do? And it just stuck, yes. Right?
Yeah, I think it did. That might not have been I just say seeing where I'm at now. Maybe it wasn't the best thing, but I felt like I was committed to that. And that's what I wanted to do, when I was young, when somebody asked you what you want to do.
Yeah, that's what it was like for me. I mean, everyone asked me what I wanted to be, and I said an architect. And by the time I get to college, didn't make it in. So just go not completely different direction, but you just adapt, I guess.
Right.
So tell me kind of how it went with law enforcement after college.
So graduated from college. I worked at my job that I kind of worked through college and high school. Was a landscaping center, and oddly enough, what I went to college for was agricultural science, which included like a minor in horticulture and international agriculture. I still don't know what that is, but that's what it was. So didn't really do anything associated with criminal justice or anything. And Virginia Tech really didn't have that type of option when I went through it. I don't know if they offer anything now that would be similar, but that was another thing. I think going in, I can't say that I really wanted to go to college, but it was kind of an expectation. That would have been an expectation from my parents to say, we think it's really important that you go to college and get a 4-year degree in something. And I don't know, I probably didn't take it seriously enough going into it and kind of just winged it, maybe. I mean, I learned a lot, but I probably could have done a lot more to like gear towards or focus in on what I wanted to do. But after graduating, then I worked for probably that summer, and then there was an opening at our local sheriff's office, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll try to put in for it, and went in and interviewed and got it. And
so there's no training for that, like a year type one.
So once you're hired, I went to an 18-week academy, and then and that's where kind of like I look at law enforcement, and I think like it's when people talk about reform, it's probably one of the things that they need to reform. The agency that I was with, I think I may have field trained for about 5 weeks after I got out of that 18-week academy, which the academy is a very basic, this is what you need to do. Very, extremely basic, doesn't really show you what you need to know. It's kind of like cornerstones of what you need to know. And they give you evaluations on scenarios. And if you do good, then you pass. I guess it's like a pass fail type thing. Like once you get to your department, depending on the department, the normal field training time that I've heard from most departments is between 14 and 18 weeks. I was about 5 weeks before like I was sent out my own, and they were like, well, if you get a call, we're gonna try to get somebody else out to you, but just go out and see what you can do. I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I think like during the first several months that I was like on the road doing patrol, I was extremely conflicted because I was like, I don't feel like I've had the training that I need. But at the same time, I was like, well, I've been working for them for this 18-week academy. I feel like I owe them like enough time. So, I mean, I was on borderline of like saying, I just need to quit because I don't feel like I'm trained for this. And, I'm responding to domestics. I'm responding to psychological emergencies, all types of things. But fortunately, I was with a shift that really helped me, and they would come answer calls with me if I needed help and things like that. But it was an extremely stressful time. I'll just extremely stressful time.
Yeah, I can even imagine.
Yeah.
Just with us talking about your Enneagram of hardworking, responsible, and trustworthy, and the biggest thing is they foresee problems.
Yeah.
But what kind of stuff did you learn at the academy? Like, obviously, when people hear that, they think, oh, immediately shooting range.
So yeah, that was like maybe a week. We had a week of like shooting range practice or whatever. And for Virginia, like the minimum, or basically, you have to shoot a 70, like, which I've always thought was extremely odd for like, if you shoot a 70, you're good. And when I first started, because all of my experience with firearms up to that point had been like rifles and shotguns, I really had no experience with handguns. So when I first started shooting, I was in that. I think I maybe scored like a 75 or something when I first shot. I was like, "Ooh, man, I've got to do better than that." Like, so by the end of my career, I was in like the low 90s for shooting. But when you look at that, I'm like, 70 is awfully low for like a qualified person. 70 is like what I would expect from somebody walking off the street type deal. But
yeah.
So shooting was one, and then like you do like a week of driving, and we had like this you call like a podunk racetrack. It's called East Side Speedway, and that's where we did our like driver's training. So we
offensive, yeah. Don't they call it something like offensive? I don't know the terminology, but I've heard about it through like FBI and other groups that they have stuff like that.
I don't know if what we do is comparable to the FBI, but basically just what to expect from your vehicle when you're operating at higher speeds. About how fast or how much you can push your vehicle before you would perhaps lose control of it or something like that. Because I feel like that's when you look at law enforcement statistics on causes of death and things like deaths in the line of duty, a lot of times, traffic crashes are one of those. And it's because, unfortunately, people are pushing cars more than what they can drive them. And they get themselves in a situation and they crash, and then they can't help anybody.
Yeah. The biggest question people probably ask you is, have you shot anybody before?
I've not shot anybody. Thank God. I feel like there was one time where I thought that it was about to happen, and the situation changed, and thank God it did. But it's just one of those things that, I always look back on that moment. I'm like, if something else had happened or changed, it would be a totally different story. But thankfully the person kind of made a good decision.
Any other situation?
Okay, so we live in a rural area, but it's still busy with traffic and stuff. And towards the city of Stanton, there's like a bypass that goes around called 262. And one day we had gotten like, I don't know how many calls, but the calls just kept coming in randomly that there was a cow out loose in the road running around crazy. And we got like the areas that we were getting the calls from were far enough apart to where it was like you wouldn't think that the cow would be traveling that quickly, but I guess she was. Because you get a call at this one location and then like probably 2 miles away you get the call and be like, well, she's over here now. So we were like, well, there must be a bunch of cows out or something somewhere, and they just all gotten out. Well, this kept going on from like, I don't know, it started in the afternoon because I came on for night shift, and it went like late into the night. And I think about 12 or 1 in the morning, we got a call, and I was like, I sat at one location because we'd gotten other calls. I'm like, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to wait until the next person calls. I'm going to be close by. So I get out there, and there's a cow. And from the way she's acting and just from how I've seen cows and grown up with cows, I don't know if somebody had already hit her and like left, but she was acting crazy. Or she maybe had like, I don't know if she had rabies or what, but she was not acting like a normal cow. Like really, really high-headed, upset.
And you would know that. I mean, with your past too.
Yeah, just wasn't acting quite right. So we had I was trying to like find an area where I could like confine her, and there was like one field that I knew that was down the road, and I was like, okay, I know there's a gate down there somewhere, so if I just get down there, get somebody to open the gate, I'm going to bring her down that way and get her going. Well, whoever it was, or when I tried to do it, the cow did not go the way I wanted it to go, and she like ran the opposite direction. Ends up going up on this bypass 262, and it was raining at the time, in the middle of the night, raining. And every time, and this is like, it's marked like 55 miles an hour, but most people go like 60, 65 on it.
If you're a local.
Yeah. So people were coming down the road, and for whatever reason, whenever she saw the headlights, she would like run straight for the headlights. So I'm like, this cow is going to go into somebody's car. It's only a matter of time. So I've talked to my supervisor. I'm like, I need some more people up here to like block off the road to see if we can get her off. Things weren't going anywhere. She kept running towards the cars. I had one guy bring like a tow strap and said he was going to rope her. I was like, no, you're not. I was like, what are you going to do when you rope her? So he tried, and he like got drugged down the road, and I was like, this isn't working. So we get to an area where I see that there's a clearing, and like there's a hillside that goes up, and she's kind of headed that way. And I call my supervisor, and I was like, look, I really hate to have to say this, but if she gets to this hillside, I'm going to shoot her, because she's running towards these cars. She's going to go into somebody's windshield. I don't want to see a cow on somebody's windshield, because that's going to kill somebody. And we've spent enough time trying to get her to where she needs to go. So I get out of my car. It's still pouring rain. I've got my shotgun, and I run up and I end up shooting her. And I always reference the Me, Myself, and Irene movie. When he's got the cow on the side of the road that's been hit, and for whatever reason, like this cow would not die. Like she was on the ground, and she would not die. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me, because I take no joy in like doing this to the cow, but like to preserve life of somebody driving down the road, it just had to be done, and would not die. I don't know how many times I shot that cow. There's a report on it somewhere because I wrote a big report because I was like, I'm gonna get in trouble for this. Somebody's gonna complain. I'm gonna have a complaint. But
So
there's a report on file somewhere.
was that like, I would imagine using the shotgun, you've got a much longer report. Isn't like every time you shot, you have to justify?
For animals, not at least where we're at.
Not for animals.
Usually you don't write a report. I just thought because of the scenario that I was going to write a report to cover me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if anybody else would have even wrote a report, but I thought it necessary due to the circumstances.
You were trying to foresee future problems, you would say?
I was. And,
No,
I could definitely foresee future problems with that.
How slow were you with, like, I mean, you know me, I probably couldn't do that. Like, sadly, I'd probably let people just run and hit her, which would probably cause a lot more deaths. But like, how slow were you to like do that? Like, you got the shotgun, were you able to do it immediately walking up to her?
Oh, well, once I did it, like I tried to do it pretty quick, but she had a fighting spirit or something because she stuck with it. And I remember I walked up like after she fell over because she was still moving around a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go up and just put her out of her misery. And I get up there and I shoot again, and she got some more life to her because she came up and like charged me, and I'm like backpedaling with the shotgun. And I remember one of my supervisors was over there looking, and he was like, I swear to God, I thought she was going to take you down. But then she fell over again, and she expired. But yeah,
Man. So I guess my other question is, I mean, you deal with, I guess, the whole county, and just to set the scene for other people listening, these houses, a lot of the houses aren't close to one another, so it's hard to check in on some people. Have you ever had to, I would imagine if somebody dies and I guess they don't have family or anything like that, how does that even handled, and how do you even hear about stuff like that? Is it like the mailman, or is it like
yeah.
a small fire or something like that?
One time we had a lady that had passed away in her home. The mailman is the person who called us because she had stopped getting her mail, and I think he called us several months after the fact, like the mail that had started building up in her mailbox. And he was like, look. So we got there, and I think it was probably 3 months prior, because we went through the mail and looked, and I was like, okay, well, this is the last piece of mail that was, or the first earliest, I guess, chronologically mail that she wouldn't have gotten, so it'd have to have been in this time frame. And I think it was about 3 or 4 months prior to when she must have passed away. And that's one of those things that really stinks, because you're like, man, this person just didn't have anybody that checked in on them, or family members or friends that stopped by, but she must have just not had that.
Mm. What's the process? I guess you have to confirm that the person's dead, then you call in the coroner, and you guys have a coroner.
As far typically, it wasn't a coroner. You had to call a medical examiner, and or a doctor, medical examiner that was licensed medical examiner or whatever, and explain the situation. And if it was an elderly person and there was no really questions about what was going on, then typically you would just call a funeral home or the hospital, well, the morgue, and they would transport to the hospital for, I guess, safekeeping until they figure out what they could do with them. But typically you call funeral home if they had those family members. Now, if it was something where there was more suspicion, then talk to a medical examiner, and they would be like, well, we're going to have to do autopsy, and then the rescue squad would come pick up the body, and they'd end up transporting it like down to, I think, Richmond or Roanoke for us, which is like 2 hours away. On that one, we like had to go in through the basement, and like as soon as the like basement door was broken, I was like, No, this is not good. This is not good.
Would you say it's the worst thing you've ever smelled?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty bad, and I feel like I don't know what it is about the the smell of somebody that, and I mean, like, if somebody has just passed away, that's one thing. Like, you know, that's not bad. But this individual had sat for 3 or 4 months,
3 months.
and I mean, that type of smell, like, for whatever reason, sticks to you. Like,
What time of year was it?
it was the summertime, so
Oh.
it was not pleasant. It was not pleasant. Um,
Oh.
but for whatever reason, that smell, like, and you know what? I feel like nobody ever passes away in the wintertime that happens. It's always the summertime. Or at least for me, like, personally in my law enforcement experience, it
Mhm.
was always summertime. Like, I remember the one time I put, like, the fire department was there, and I was like, "Y'all give me one of your tanks." And I put on one of the tanks and had, like, the mask on to go in the house because it was that bad. Like, you just couldn't.
And I remember you told me a similar story, but it had a whole different outcome with you taking down the front door because you couldn't get into the
Yes.
lady's house.
Yes. Uh, Somebody called and said, "Hey, uh, we went over to our friend's house and, like, at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and we saw she was in the bed through the window, and we were beating on the window trying to wake her up, and she wouldn't wake up. We came back tonight at like 6 or 7 o'clock, and she's still in bed, and we tried to beat on the window again. She won't wake up. Can y'all come out here and check on her?" So I'm immediately like, all right, this, and it was an older lady, and I was like, okay, well, she's probably passed away. So we go out there, and or I'm by myself actually. I go out there, do the same thing. I go over to the window they're telling me about. I like have to get like a. I remember there was like a plastic chair because the window sat up real high. I got like a plastic lawn chair and sat and, like, climbed up on the lawn chair and was like looking in the window. I was like, I see this lady laying in bed all covered up, can't see her face, and I'm like beating on the window to the point where I'm like, I'm going to accidentally break this thing. So go around to the front door.
Was
Uh,
this before or after the previous woman,
this
the
was
3 monther?
Yeah,
Oh
the 3
man.
monther was, I was pretty new when the 3 monther happened. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get this one taken care of early. So I go around to one door, and this individual is a hoarder. So she had like mounds of, I don't know what it was. I mean, some stuff was like trash bags piled up with trash, all kinds of this stuff in front of this one door. And I was like, well, I'm not getting in that door. So I go around to the front of the house, and there's like a brand new door there, like brand spanking new. But the house is not in the best condition. And I'm like, it's like ironic that it has such a nice door. I'm like, okay. It's like, so I try it, and of course it's locked. So I call a supervisor. I'm like, look, think the lady's like passed away. Do we have any contacts we can call to get us in the house? So I wait a while to, like, see if we get any, like, our communication center will, like, look up that address and see if there's any associated numbers with it to see if somebody can come with a key or something like that, or a family member, and they can't find anything. So finally our supervisor's like, well, he's like, just see if you can make entry. I was like, okay. I'm like, "Well, kick in a door." So I go up to this new door, and I previously had kicked open a door, and it was really easy, like, uh, on another call, and I was like, okay, I got this. I'm gonna kick this door in, and I kick it, and nothing happens, and I'm like, son of a gun. So I'm like kicking on this door probably for like 10 minutes. I'm like worried the house is gonna fall over because the house is shaking so much.
Before the door.
Yeah, yeah, before the door breaks. Finally, I'm able to get the door broken open and walk in, and I yell in the house, and I'm saying, like, "Sheriff's office, are you okay?" No response. And,
And it-
nobody came to the door the whole 10 minutes that I was kicking on it. So I'm like, you know, gotta be dead. Gotta be dead. So I'm like trying to make my way through this house, which again is a hoarder, and there's stuff everywhere, like, piled up high. So I'm kind of like maneuvering through the hallways, trying not to touch anything. Uh, get to the bedroom, and I see her laying there. I walk over and go to I guess shake her at that point. And I mean, I barely put my hand on her, and she lets out a blood curdling scream. And I probably lost 5 years of my life right there. I swear, I probably jumped and put a hole in the roof because I was terrified. She's lucky I didn't pull my gun out and start shooting, thinking she was a zombie or something. I don't know.
Oh,
She
that.
puts out this blood curdling scream, and after I regain composure enough, I'm mad at this point because I'm like, there's absolutely no way you didn't hear this. And I was like, you didn't hear me kicking in your front door. And she said something, I can't remember. Oh, I know what it was. She's like, my doctor gave me medicine for the gout, and it knocks me out. And I was like, unbelievable. So after I changed my pants, I call my supervisor and I'm like, she's alive. And he's like, what? He's like, so you kicked her door in? I said, well, you told me to. So, of course, then I've got to document all this stuff and do a report on it and say, yeah, I kicked in the door because I thought she was dead. She wasn't even that upset about it. I once I got calmed down, I was like, she's gonna be ticked. That was like a brand new door, or it looked like a brand new door. And she was like, oh, don't worry about it. She's like, I'll get it fixed tomorrow. And I was like, well, I was like, okay. I think I did. If I remember right, I did a referral.
Reimbursement?
Well,
No.
no, I actually did a referral to Adult Protective Services because just the living conditions and stuff she was in. She was older, but it unfortunately never really went anywhere because they were kind of like, well, she's content living in these conditions, and it's kind of her choice. So she can do what she wants, type deal. Which is another thing. With that, I never understand that stuff. Like how we can't help people with that type of issue. It's frustrating.
Yeah. So, with all these amazing stories, I guess, how did your point of view of law enforcement change over, I guess, your time?
I started in 2013, and 2014 when the shooting of Michael Brown happened. There was a huge shift or that I could see in how everything changed for law enforcement. And it's one of those things where I know everybody's going to have their opinion about that, or these shootings in general, but whenever one of these things comes on the news and I see it, I never just jump to conclusions on that because I feel like I've been in those situations, and fortunately it worked out for me where I never have to, take anybody's life. But I've been in those situations where I've been like, somebody's come close to that. There are definitely bad cops out there. Just like any profession, there's people that shouldn't be in certain professions, and there's bad people out there. But I think you also have to look at a totality of the circumstances and see what the other person was doing. And if it wasn't something bad, then yeah, that police officer needs to be dealt with accordingly. They shouldn't be a police officer anymore. But I feel like just the way things have gone over the past several years, we jumped to that so fast. And I think we have to be really careful about that to make sure we get the right results. People talk about police reform, and I hear a lot of people talk about basically just disbanding police departments. And I'm like, that's crazy. I can't I really have a hard time understanding that thought process at all, because I'm like, either you have no sense of what people are really like, and what people can do to you, or you're one of those people that just want to get by with doing that stuff with everybody. And it's just from things that I've seen, like people can be real bad, unfortunately. And I wish we lived in the world where you could be like Andy Taylor from the Andy Griffith Show, which is honestly what I wish I could be all the time when I was in law enforcement. Like that was my goal. But when things get nasty and it looks bad, it is bad, but there's a reason. I mean, it got to the point that it got to. Not in all cases, but I have to be really careful when I talk to people about this because I know some people get really upset. And I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon of like disband the police departments because, like I say, I've been there before and I've seen how things go and how people you deal with will escalate, and you're trying to do everything you can to like no, because I mean I can tell you personally, if I didn't have to put hands on somebody, that was great because it was a lot less work for me. And I didn't have to worry about getting to an altercation with somebody. And then, if you're already choosing to fight a law enforcement officer, that kind of tells me that, I need to be really worried for myself then. Because if you're willing to do that, when I just like do something like traffic stop or something or whatever, people don't want to own up to mistakes that they've made, and then they escalate it to rolling around on the side of the road, and that's just not, to me. You can't like justify that from that standpoint. But I don't know. I guess there's always different perspectives. And I try to keep an open mind to it because there's certainly instances that's happened and I've been like, yeah. I mean, for instance, the George Floyd thing, the Derek Chauvin, I feel like he made a really big mistake and he shouldn't have done what he did. He should be held accountable for it. I'm not sure that the other officers that were on the scene, because I feel like if I remember correctly, 2 of them were like brand new officers in field training. So they're in a position of like, they're looking to
just following the lead. Yeah.
Well, that, and also you run into the problem of like, if you don't do what so and so says, that could cost you your career. They might just be like, well, this guy didn't listen to an order from me. You just need to get rid of him. And that type of stuff happens.
Yeah.
So, and even I know that I'm not both of the, or not all 3, but I know that one of them specifically said something to the effect of, hey, maybe you need to move off of him. And the guy, at that point, I'm like, he's done what he can. I mean, what do you want him to do? Like tackle him off of him?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a, how do you deal with it? Because I look at it as when I first started, I wouldn't have known what to do. Like in 2013, when I was first put on the road, if somebody had done something like that, I might have been like, hey, you need to get off of them. But if they didn't, like, what am I going to do? Tackle a 20-year veteran off of somebody that's already been charged with something? And it's a very, I think it puts, and that's one of those things with this reform stuff. I think people need to look at it from a standpoint of, I feel like the Chauvin guy, he had a history of things, and he probably shouldn't have been in law enforcement when this happened, and it should have been addressed. And that's where people need to start looking at the administration, not the actual deputies. Because you get into that, and I've seen that too. I feel like in law enforcement, like the thin blue line thing, it's almost turned into where it's like a gang. I mean, unfortunately, it has, and it's just how far certain people want to take it. Like, you can't back up every police officer all the time, no matter what. Like, there's sometimes where people make mistakes, and that needs to be dealt with. But I think sometimes the mentality from that side is, no, we support our boys no matter what, and that's just not a healthy. That's not a healthy environment to be in.
Yeah. But so is that kind of one of the main reasons all this? I guess the change in the attitude, and I guess you kind of wanted more security with your job, that you switched to your profession.
And I know with like the sheriff's office work a little differently than police departments, and at a sheriff's office, there's an election every 4 years, and the county or whatever decides who they want for the sheriff, which it's kind of like a popularity contest, and every 4 years that brings in turmoil into the office, and people are more worried about what they're going to get. If so and so is elected, they're going to get a promotion. If so and so is elected, or whatever the case may be, and they're trying to, go out and to the department be like, well, you need to vote for him because of this, and you need to vote for him because of that. There were 3 different candidates that ran in our county, like the first election cycle I experienced, and it was just I found it like extremely, I guess, disgusting. I don't know. That's the best way I can think about it. All of the shenanigans that went on between people, what they were trying to get you to do, and trying to convince you to vote for this person or that person, or there was no focus, or there was little focus on your job. Like, more people were worried about what was going on, like behind closed doors, and the political aspect of it. It just took away from what
The
you like
actual
to
work.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, when I left the sheriff's office, because I worked at the sheriff's office for about 5 years, and then went to a police department, very small police department, but it's a Woodrow Wilson Rehabilitation Center. So it's in Fishersville, Virginia, and they work with clients that have all types of disabilities, intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, and that was I really enjoyed that a lot more, because it was just a different type of law enforcement. I want to like compare it to like a school resource officer maybe. A lot of these people were adults, but they were functioning on like middle school or lower levels.
Mhm.
So you were able to kind of like mentor them more, because a lot of people, they were adults, but they'd never been in like a social setting, and growing up in their lives, they were always at home,
Mhm.
and like the parents kind of sheltered them from any social setting, or they weren't able to go to schools because of their disabilities. And then they bring them to the rehab center, and it was more like a college campus setting. Like, they had their own dorm rooms, they shared a dorm room with people. They were exposed to opposite sexes, which led to a lot of problems, because they didn't know how to handle it, or deal with like relationships or rejection. And then you'd have somebody going crazy because somebody said they didn't like them. Uh, but
Sounds like a reality show.
yeah, yeah, kind of. But you were able to, or I felt like I was able to like mentor those kids a lot more, or I say kids, but adults, and uh, just give them a better understanding of how to deal with certain things. And it was nice to have that type of discretion, I guess, versus when I worked on the road, it was like you had a domestic assault and you're throwing somebody in the back of the car, and it's the same place you've been to 5 times in a row, but somehow the person's still able to get out.
Nothing changes, basically.
Yeah,
Whereas,
they get out of it in court. It gets dismissed for whatever silly reason, or the Commonwealth Attorney's Office decides, oh well, we're not gonna. They've done this 3 times before, and usually, like, if you get 3 misdemeanor domestic assaults, the third time is supposed to turn into a felony because you're a problem. But a lot of times, for whatever reason, they'll like plead it down and be like, "Oh, it's just another misdemeanor," and turn them loose to do it again. And I've seen the end results of some of that, and it ends up with people getting killed. I've I'm talking with, I think I've talked with Kara about this before, and you previously interviewed her, because I know that's a big passion of hers, is
yeah.
supporting the domestic violence survivors and victims. And it, you know, it's really frustrating with like the court system, how some of that stuff.
So the changes that you had to go through with your career, moving on and stuff like that, was there any like big milestones or events that changed your trajectory that you can kind of point to?
I had to go through a federal lawsuit at one point, uh, which was a miserable experience.
Hmm.
uh, and fortunately, we were investigated by the state police and our Commonwealth attorney, and they cleared us of any criminal wrongdoing. But people still have the right to civilly sue if they think that there's an issue. So they went that route. And I was actually, it was several years after the incident had happened where this came up. I was actually at Woodrow Wilson, and the way I found out about it was a friend texted me and said, "Hey, are you all right? Or what's going on? Uh, you're in the paper." And I get, I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? And I look at the paper, and sure enough, here's this huge article about a lawsuit for $5 million being made against these deputies involved in this incident. Um, and eventually, myself and the other deputy were dismissed from the lawsuit because, like, there was a time frame where we weren't there and the other person was there. And then the other deputy, I'm not sure what the end result was because I don't know if they settled out or what. I have no and I'll say this. I don't think that that individual did anything wrong, but I also understand his viewpoint of if he's on the line for a ton of money when he did nothing wrong and a jury says, "Oh, well, we think he did something wrong," and he's on the hook for that. That's kind of one of those facets of, like, I always say, like, when I see these things on the news, I'm like, I don't want to be quick to judge because I've been in those situations and it's not always how it's made to look. Or, you know, you
Yeah.
might see a video, but it's only 15 seconds of a 30-minute video.
Yeah.
But
No.
yeah, so I think after that, I really like go to the anagram thing of foreseeing future problems. I was like, really, that was just not worth it to me when I know that I did everything that I could right for this person and then have to go through that for as long as I did. Like, it's just, it was a stressful, it was a stressful time because, I mean, you're talking about, losing pretty much everything you have because of
Something that was
like
out of
that.
your control, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, if I was in your situation, I would say I have bad foresight, and I usually wait till external events happen to me before I make changes. Like, I let other people make the changes rather than myself, which
Right.
probably is not the best. We have completely different decision making. Mine's more like forced upon me. Um, but yeah, yours is probably the better path to go than mine.
Yeah.
Um, so just to wrap it up, what is, and this is one, well, not wrap it up because we will have the lightning round after this question,
Oh,
but
okay.
what is something that your parents did that you would like to pass on to your children, your two beautiful children? And what is something that you are trying to do a little bit differently than they did?
I would say I feel like just growing up, it's one of those things that, and I can't even remember like the context of where it was brought up, but I feel like it was like just because just because the group's doing it doesn't mean it's the right thing type deal. I feel
Mhm.
like both of my parents kind of were always big on that, just to make sure uh, that you're not just following the group. You know,
Mhm.
if you see if you see a problem with something, I mean, something like bullying or something. If you see somebody being bullied or a group mistreating somebody, don't join the group. Do what's right. Try to stand up for them, and I guess advocate for them, or whatever you can do to help them. Or maybe not even that, but just be nice to them uh, when other people aren't.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one thing I think I really want to like instill in the kids is always look, just because the group's doing it doesn't mean it's the right thing. Always think for yourself and try to make good decisions based on how we raise you.
Yeah.
I guess that's every parent's want wish.
It's not their priority usually.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is there anything that you would change that your parents did?
Um.
Or how about this? I'll phrase it this way. Is there anything that you would stress that maybe your parents didn't stress?
I would say and this I think this is like a generational thing, and I feel like our generation's starting to figure this out, but maybe the crucialness of a college education. Um, and that's kind of from my experience of like, when I started, I really didn't have any ambitions to do college. But my parents both grew up in a time where like, if you had a 4-year degree, like that was great. Like you could go out and get a job, but I feel like now a lot of people are seeing that they go get all these 4-year degrees and they expect to be coming out working I don't know, 70,000 or $80,000 job a year, and like that's just not. I mean, I did a 4-year degree, and when I worked at the sheriff's office, I was making. I think I started at like 30,000, 30,000 a year, like, and moved up from there. So uh, there's a real. I think there's a real false sense, and I guess my parents didn't like say, oh, if you go to college, you're gonna make a lot of money, type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they definitely saw the value of that in their time. I'm not trying to discount that now because I'm glad I went to college and got to experience all the things I got to experience. Got to meet you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
made it all worth it.
Yeah.
But looking back, like I'm always like, man, if I had done something like, I guess like I look at it as if I had done something like a trade or something, I feel like I would have been just as maybe financially well off
Mm-hmm.
as if I had done what I did for a 4-year degree, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Just giving that option to the kids saying like, don't just think about college. Like if you have a passion that's not college, I don't want to pressure you to make you think like college is the only choice. Like, if you want to go to a trade school and learn mechanics, or if you want to go learn to be an electrician, whatever the case may be, like a technical center or something, that's an option versus like college is where it's at.
Yeah. And from what I've seen, like my school obviously probably had a lot more options than maybe Augusta County did,
Yes.
just because they had mechanical programs, they had internship programs where you can kind of, I guess, pick your path. Because I know someone who went to a different school for probably half the day, and they would just work on cars.
Yeah.
But they had, nowadays they probably have even more stuff. So I guess the thing is start them early and vary what they do, in my opinion, I guess, at least.
Right.
Okay, sir. It is time for the lightning round.
Round.
I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and these questions are purely for basically the listeners to truly understand who you are. So I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. They'll either be multiple choice or true or false, and you have to answer them, not lightning speed, but let's call it the...
Yeah, you're saying lightning speed.
Yeah, as fast as the Zoom call will go. Okay, there will probably be some very dramatic music played over this just to make it more dramatic, just like like a good Jeopardy thing. That'll start right about now. Crust or no crust on sandwiches?
Crust.
Should you go Dutch on the first date?
No, you should pay it.
Colorado, Italy, or Tokyo for vacation?
Colorado.
What is your guilty road trip snack?
A Reese's Fast Break.
Biggest pet peeve?
Not being honest.
You're 15 years old. What radio station is playing on the truck or car? I assume it's a truck.
Yeah, it's a truck. 98.5 Rock. It's like classic.
Okay. How many pairs of shoes do you own?
Only 5.
Who was your first crush?
Shania Twain.
And last question: how funny would you rate yourself from 1 to 10?
I mean, if I think I'm pretty funny, I'll give myself a 6. All right, I won't go crazy.
That's good.
6.
Well, that's it. That's it, sir. Thank you for being part of the first ever People More Interesting Than Me lightning round.
Yeah, I'm glad to have been part of it.
Actually, let me give credit. It was actually Aaron McCrane who gave me the idea. So,
okay.
well, thank you very much. I know you're just chilling out in a hotel room, but you could definitely be watching something good instead of talking to me. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, I'm glad to.
If you like this week's episode of People More Interesting Than Me, please subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to share with family and friends. See you next time.